Well, it's a real privilege for me to be with you this evening, especially in something like this baptism service. And you are going to be utterly delighted to hear that I am planning to say very little, because so much has been shared and it has of so much value that I'm scared if I add too many words to what has already been so well said that I'll simply sink your thoughts rather than elevate them any higher. But I will be asking some questions at the end of this, and there will be the opportunity for each person who is gathered here this evening, both to ask the question as to whether, as you sit here and you have never been baptized, whether you feel that you are being called to that. And indeed, for those of you who are here and you're not even sure if there is a God in whose name you may be baptized into, to actually welcome him. What I would like to try and do this evening, just very, very briefly, is maybe just answer one simple question. And it's this. Look, if I am living my life in such a way where I don't really hurt anyone else, does it really matter what I do? Because what we've just heard promised by these baptismal candidates, and what you've heard, as you've heard them share, is they've all now said that they are no longer living them for themselves, but they're now living for someone else. And the question I want to ask is why is that such a big deal? I mean, after all, if we're all just doing the best that we can, and so long as we're not hurting anyone else, then surely that is okay. Now, I guess the problem with the question is that it all rather depends on how we understand what it means to be a human being. C.S. Lewis, he put it rather well. He said, look, imagine the human race is like a flotilla of ships out at sea. Now, he says it makes a very, very big difference if you are the owner of your own ship, because obviously you can do whatever you want with your own ship. But what happens if you don't actually own the ship which you are piloting at the time? Now that suddenly changes things dramatically. Because if you don't own the ship, you're simply piloting it, and then you decide that, just for the fun of it, you'll put a hole in the bottom and sink it. You may find that even though you were captain at the time, the owner has a few things that they'd like to ask you. As a matter of fact, so is the insurance company in this day and age. You may well go to jail. But that's a whole other story. It is a tremendous difference, and it makes all the difference in the world, whether you are the owner or whether you are the tenant of the boat. And similarly, it makes all the difference in the world, whether we're actually owners of our own lives or simply stewards of them and we actually belong to someone else. It makes all the difference in the world, because if we are ultimately owned by someone else, there are duties that we have and responsibilities that we carry that we simply cannot excuse by saying, well, I'm just piloting at the time. And so I would like to suggest to you that we actually belong to God twice over. First of all, through creation. Now, if you were here in a series that's being preached here at the moment through Romans, you would have heard this earlier on when we were looking at the first chapter of this book. There is a loving God who created us. He puts us here. He wants us here. He loves us, and he's longing for relationship with us. Now, I know that this whole idea about whether there is a God who has created us has become contentious. And indeed, we've now seen mass advertising campaigns on bendy buses, billboards, and countless intelligently designed T-shirts, all telling us that there is no God, or there probably isn't one, so there's no need to worry in the first place. And if you're certainly asking that question, then I'll certainly love to recommend a small little thin book that's only just been published by a colleague of mine, Professor John Lennox, who's a professor here at the University of Oxford, who has more degrees and more languages than I'll ever accumulate, who has written a book to deal slightly, to try to address part of the question that's been raised, if that is a question that you're wrestling with. All I want to say is this. There is no conflict between the idea that we may wholly give our minds to the investigation of the laws which govern this universe. Because even an extensive and exhaustive understanding of every law and every scientific principle that governs this world, and even if we were able to document them all in the most systematic and thorough manner, that in no way whatsoever tells us about whether there was actually someone who was behind it. I live in a house, believe it or not. My house is a beautiful house. It was built in the 1800s by people who studied science. They built it with right angles and foundations. 8 years ago, we had an extension built to our home. Sadly, this was built by a group of postmodern constructionists who didn't believe in right angles, laws, or indeed anything else to do with logic or physics, it seems. It is falling down. We've had to rebuild it. Please don't ask me what I would like to do to these builders who have disappeared. There are many things I'd like to do to them. Sadly, I can't do any of them because I am a Christian. As a Christian, I can't even think what I would like to do to them, which makes it even harder. But the very fact that without any difficulty whatsoever, a bright 12-year-old could describe the principles on which the house is built, all of the physical laws, all of the mathematical laws, everything that needs to be in place, even though with that very simple thing, we have an exhaustive understanding of the laws which are employed. An exhaustive understanding of the laws employed in no way implies that there is no agent, no designer, no person who built it. You cannot move, even from claiming, from having a complete, exhaustive, pure mathematical understanding of this universe, if such a thing is possible, to then conclude that there is no one behind it. To establish one and have exhaustive knowledge in one field in no way answers the other question as to agency. Is there someone who is here? And as Christians, we don't simply say that there is a God who is behind this universe. We believe that there is a God who loves us, who desires relationship with us, who is looking for you and wants us to enjoy this life. Now, there are many things that we are meant to enjoy. Now, the trouble is we often take the things that we're meant to enjoy and we push them to extremes. Now, people sometimes get confused when Christians talk about living a radical life for Christ and for God, because they think what it means is to say no to all forms of pleasure and enjoyment and somehow lead a life as an ascetic. That is not true. It is simply the case that many of the good things which have been given us when taken to excess actually bring not simply an increase in the amount of pleasure, but actually begin to remove pleasure. The constant flow of new rewards into our life can ultimately actually undermine our capacity to enjoy them. Take alcohol, for example. We are not forbidden to drink alcohol, but simply to enjoy it. So if you have a 1961 Latour or a 1982 Lafite, and just in case you're wondering, that is far more preferable than having a 1961 Lafite and a 1982 Latour. Although if you have either, I'm happy to come and just do a back-to-back comparison with you to verify that fact. That these things were given to us, and through the hand and skill of obviously some people that can only be described as geniuses, we may enjoy them. But we sometimes get primary and secondary things confused. The primary reason we have these things is so that we might enjoy them. Now, one of the secondary things that can happen is if you have too much, you can get drunk. But here's the point. We do not drink these things to get drunk. We drink these things to enjoy them. As a matter of fact, the process of getting drunk can actually undermine your enjoyment of it in the first place. I had to learn this lesson when I was 17 years old. Not a Christian by any stretch of the imagination. Living in a country, just having moved from Saudi Arabia where there was no alcohol, to a country in Cyprus where most citizens believe that children should start drinking at the age of 4 because that way it allows you to acclimatise to alcohol. And without that background, I didn't have the acclimatisation. And so let's just say I pushed the boundaries a little bit further than may have been wise. I can remember one evening standing outside my parents' house, wondering whether or not I was actually going to be sick or not, and concluded that I wasn't, and simply went to bed. And no sooner had I gone from vertical to horizontal, all of a sudden, everything started moving. I got up, I went to the bathroom, I opened the door. I had never had this experience before, and I was just very violently sick. I went back to bed. I was woken up in the morning by my 6-year-old brother running into my parents' bedroom and then who then yelled at the top of his voice, "Mummy, Mummy, the toilet has exploded." There are things which are given to us for our enjoyment, but we take them too far, and they actually start to operate to our detriment. God has created us to enjoy many things in this world, and they are good. There is nothing wrong with them. But there seems to be a deeper passion behind all of these things, which no amount of food or alcohol or indeed anything else can ever satisfy. And just like as we have we find a hunger in our stomachs, there is a need in that desire in food, and just as we are thirsty, we find that there is water. We would also say that this deeper longing in our hearts is met in the present reality of God. He has given us many good things. He wants us to enjoy them, but ultimately He has put us here so that we may enjoy Him and relationship with Him. That is why there is so much singing. If all you want to get drunk, then you can do that, if you want to, with sufficient types of vinegar. God loves us. He created us. There is a reason why you are here. He is desirous of relationship with you. Do you know Him? Now, of course, sometimes it's not just the fact that we find ourselves in a good place surrounded by good things and we have questions. We sometimes actually find that life has taken a slightly different situation and we actually begin to look at things rather negatively. I remember being amazed at the sheer number of hits that Susan Boyle got when she sang that song on some TV program that I know I should watch but wasn't, but did see it on the internet. Does that make sense to anyone? No? Good. The last time I checked, if you look across the 4 or 5 major sites where you can see Susan Boyle singing this song, I think the total number of hits added to 250 million. That's incredible. 250 million people. Who knows, it may even be higher now. I guess, of course, it's the unlikeliness of the event, to some extent, that grabbed people and got them to watch it. But there's also something tremendously captivating about the words which she sang. Let me just read you some of them. There was a time when men were kind, their voices soft, their words inviting. There was a time when love was blind, the world a song and the song exciting. There was a time, and then it all went wrong. I dreamed a dream in time gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. Then I was young and unafraid, and dreams were made and used and wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come at night with their voices soft as thunder, and as they tear your hope apart, they turn your dream to shame. And then she sings of love won and love's lost, and concludes with these words, and still I dream he'll come to me, that we will live the years together. But there are dreams that cannot be, and there are storms we cannot weather. I had a dream my life would be, so different from the hell I'm living, so different now from what it seemed. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed. Some of us find ourselves in a world where, as I say, where we're surrounded by the good, and everything seems to be going well, and everything's going wonderful. Before I became a Christian, that was true for my life. Nothing seemed to be going wrong at all. There was no need for God almost at any level, apart from the fact that regardless of what you had, and no matter how much you had it in excess in every single category, it never ever seemed to be enough. And that was what really my family's testimony. We had more than enough. All of my family were self-made millionaires. All of them were doing exceedingly well. All of them had reasonably bright children. All of them did exceedingly well. Many of them had become self-made millionaires. And I can remember talking to one of my uncles once when I was telling him that I was going to go and read law rather than economics, because most of them had made their money in accountancy and in business. And I said, "Oh, good." And he said to me, "Oh, good, law. We need lawyers in this family." And I looked at my uncle, one of my uncles, and I said, "Uncle, we don't need a lawyer. We need a psychiatrist." And yet at many levels there was nothing fundamentally wrong. But I realized for others, we actually find ourselves caught up not in the good, but it looks like everything is bad. It seems that all the things that we have pursued, dreams that we have had, experiences that we've lived, have somehow left us broken, damaged. The danger, of course, is that we become cynical. And we do live in desperately cynical times. And yet, God doesn't simply own us through creation, that he put us here and wants us here, but also by redemption. And although I don't have time to look at it in detail, those words that we had read to us from Romans chapter 6, this is what they also speak about. That there is a God who put us here, who wants us here, who desires to have us. But this God is also aware of the fact that we are broken, that we are damaged, that we have done things that we shouldn't do, and that God has come into this world in the person of Christ. And he has literally taken on all of that into himself. He has paid for the mistakes that we have made. He has dealt with the fact that there are many foolish things that we wish we hadn't done that he will now actually take the consequence for. He takes the hit. He pays the price. He makes it possible to redeem us, to buy us back, to declare us right, to somehow completely revolutionize and change our life. And you've heard the testimonies about that changed life now. When Jesus Christ talks about new life in him, he literally means what he says. New life. The baptisms that we've witnessed this evening is a symbolic outward gesture of the fact that Jesus Christ died because of things which have gone wrong in this world. He literally became and took those things on into himself. Now, of course, it raises a question of natural justice, about whether one person could somehow be punished for what someone else has done wrong. What the Christian truth is far more profound than that. It is that God has come into this world and united himself with us. Literally become one with us. That explains the intimacy. But it also explains why the forgiveness and the transformation is so total. Because when we become one with him and are united with him, the death that he died is really the death that we should have died. Literally, he has died the death that we should have had. the dreams that look so good that end up killing us. But because he has risen to life and conquered over death, the life he now has, he gives to us. And because we're one with him, we have intimacy with him and joy, because he has literally made all things new. Do you know him? God has stepped into this world in the most incredible way. He longs to have that relationship with you. I want to be very careful how I use this metaphor. One preacher once, having made the fact that we're all ships afloat at sea, then went on to make the fact that some of us have put holes in the bottom of these ships and we're sinking. And as he developed this metaphor and this picture very, very powerfully, I might add, he then came to the end of what he was saying, looked out at the congregation, and he said, so my question to you is this: do you have a hole in your bottom? This didn't elicit the response that he was looking for. Regardless of how you find yourself here this evening, if there is a God who is true and real, who knows you, who loves you, who desires the best for you, even if you are sitting here thinking that life can't get any better, just contemplate what it means to be missing out on all that he has for you, all that he extends to you. The reality is, if we're all prepared to be honest, that even with all of the good and the beautiful that is around us, we also see evidence in our own hearts and lives of desires that can never be met in this world and were never meant to be, and things that we have done wrong for which we continue to pay the price. And the good news, the joyous news, is that God himself has actually stepped into our shoes, and he has made it possible for us to enter into new life with him.